The first thing people noticed about the girl was how quiet she was. She walked through the school halls with her eyes forward and her shoulders steady. She never rushed and never slowed down for anyone. She carried her books close to her chest like they mattered more than the noise around her. Most students passed her without looking twice. Some noticed her only because she stayed silent when others laughed, whispered, or shouted. She was new to the school, but not new to starting over. Moving had been part of her life for a long time. Each new place meant learning new rules, new faces, and new ways to stay invisible. She believed that if she kept her head down and did her work, she would be left alone. That belief had helped her before. This time it did not. From the first week, a small group of students began watching her. They noticed how she sat alone during lunch and how she chose seats near the back of the classroom. They saw how she avoided eye contact and how she never spoke unless a teacher asked her a direct question. To them, silence looked like weakness. They mistook calm for fear. The comments started small. A laugh when she walked by. A whispered word meant to sting. A shove that could be explained away as an accident. She felt each moment, but she did not react. She had learned long ago that reactions often made things worse. She focused on breathing, on counting steps, on remembering why she came to school in the first place. Education was her way out. She believed that deeply. At home, life had not been easy either. Responsibility came early for her. She learned discipline before she learned comfort. There were mornings when she woke up before sunrise, not because she wanted to, but because she had to. She learned how to manage stress without shouting. She learned how to control her body and mind through long hours of practice, repetition, and focus. None of it was done for attention. It was done for survival. At school, teachers described her as polite and well-behaved. They liked that she never caused trouble. When her grades came back strong, they praised her work ethic. What they did not see were the small signs. The way she flinched when footsteps came too close from behind. The way her jaw tightened when laughter followed her down the hall. These details were easy to miss when no one was looking closely. The bullying slowly grew. Her locker was found opened more than once. Papers went missing from her bag. Notes were left behind with words meant to hurt. She threw them away without reading them twice. She refused to let those words live in her head. Still, the weight of it followed her like a shadow. During gym class, she was often the last to be picked. Not because she was weak, but because she did not show off. She moved with control, not flash. When others ran wildly, she moved with balance. When others shouted, she stayed quiet. That only made the bullies more curious. They wanted to see her break. At lunch, she chose the same table every day, near a window where sunlight came in softly. She ate slowly and listened to music through one earbud, always keeping one ear open to the room. She was aware of her surroundings in a way most people were not. This awareness was something she had trained over time, though no one knew it. One afternoon, as she walked toward her next class, someone bumped into her shoulder hard enough to knock her books to the floor. Laughter followed. The hallway felt louder than usual. She knelt down calmly and picked up each book, one by one. Her hands did not shake. Her face showed nothing. This lack of reaction frustrated them more than anger ever could. A teacher stepped out of a classroom and asked what happened. The bullies shrugged and blamed the crowd. The girl said nothing. She knew how these moments often ended. Speaking up without proof rarely helped. So she stayed silent and walked away. What no one realized was that she was not weak. She was controlled. There was a difference. Every day she held back, she was choosing peace over chaos. Every insult she ignored was a decision, not fear. Her strength was quiet, shaped by years of effort that never needed applause. After school, she followed a routine. Homework came first, then practice. It was not a sport team or a club. It was something personal. Something taught to her by someone who believed in preparation. She trained her balance, her reflexes, and her focus. She learned how to fall safely, how to protect herself without losing control. These skills were never meant to be used in anger. They were meant to keep her safe. She never talked about this part of her life. Not because she was ashamed, but because it was private. It was her armor. Sharing it would make it feel smaller, weaker. She liked knowing that she carried strength inside her that no one could take away. As the weeks passed, the bullies grew bolder. They noticed she never fought back. They noticed she never complained. To them, this silence was an invitation. They began following her more closely, watching her routes, waiting for moments when teachers were not around. The girl felt the change in the air. She sensed it the way one senses a storm before it arrives. She became more alert, more careful. She adjusted her steps and stayed closer to crowded areas when possible. Still, she knew she could not avoid them forever. One day, as the final bell rang, she packed her bag and walked toward the exit she usually avoided. The other route was closed for cleaning. Her heart beat a little faster, but her mind stayed calm. She reminded herself of everything she had practiced. She reminded herself that she was capable. She did not know that this choice would lead to the moment that would change everything. For now, she kept walking, steady and silent, carrying a strength that the world around her had not yet seen. The story of what she could endure was only just beginning. The next morning, the girl woke up with a strange feeling in her chest. It was not fear exactly, but a quiet warning. She moved through her routine like always, washing her face, tying her shoes, and checking her bag twice. She reminded herself that school was just a place she had to pass through, not a place that defined her. Still, the feeling stayed with her. When she arrived at school, the halls were louder than usual. Laughter echoed off the lockers, and conversations overlapped in every direction. She slipped into the flow of students and walked toward her first class. A few eyes followed her, then looked away. She noticed it, but she did not react. She had learned how to read a room without letting the room read her. In class, she sat near the back as always. The lesson moved on the board, but she could sense the whispers behind her. Papers were passed. A note slid close to her desk. She did not open it. She pushed it aside without looking, keeping her eyes on the teacher. Her calm only made the others more restless. During the break, the group waited near the lockers. They blocked the path just enough to force her to slow down. Someone laughed too loudly. Another made a comment meant to draw attention. She stepped around them without a word. The hallway camera blinked above, and that small detail made them back off for now. At lunch, the air felt heavier. She sat at her usual table, but the noise around her grew sharper. Someone knocked her water bottle over as they passed. It spilled across the table and onto the floor. A few students laughed. Others looked away. She cleaned it up quietly and finished her meal. Inside, she felt the pressure building, not anger but awareness. Something was changing. She began to notice patterns. The same faces appearing in the same places. The same footsteps behind her at the same times of day. They were testing how far they could go. She responded by becoming more careful. She adjusted her schedule slightly, stayed near friends she barely spoke to, and kept herself in public areas as much as possible. After school, she followed her routine with more focus than ever. Practice lasted longer that day. Her movements were slow and controlled. She worked on balance, on breathing, on staying calm under pressure. She reminded herself that strength did not mean hurting others. It meant being able to protect herself when no one else would. The next few days passed in a tense calm. The bullying did not stop, but it changed. The words were quieter. The looks were sharper. She felt like she was being watched. Teachers noticed her silence but assumed she was simply shy. No one asked the right questions. One afternoon, a fire drill sent everyone rushing into the stairwells. The crowd pressed in from all sides. She held the railing and moved carefully. Halfway down, she felt a sudden push from behind. It was small, almost hidden, but enough to make her stumble. She caught herself and kept going. Her heart raced, but her face stayed calm. She knew then that this was no longer harmless teasing. Someone could get hurt. She thought about reporting it, but she also knew how often stories like hers were dismissed. Without clear proof, words meant little. She decided to stay alert and trust her instincts. The next day, the school felt different. The hall near the older stairwell was quiet during the last period. Maintenance signs blocked one side, forcing students through a narrow path. She hesitated before walking that way, then stepped forward anyway. Avoiding fear had always been part of her discipline. As she moved closer, she heard footsteps speed up behind her. Voices dropped low. Laughter followed. Her body reacted before her mind did. Her shoulders tightened. Her breathing slowed. She kept walking, counting each step. Someone called out her name, not kindly. She did not turn around. A hand brushed her bag. Another shove followed, harder this time. She grabbed the railing again, steadying herself. The stairwell echoed with sound, but no one else was there. She stopped walking and turned slowly. Her face was calm, but her eyes were alert. She asked them to leave her alone. Her voice did not shake. That surprised them. They expected fear. They expected tears. Instead, they stepped closer. The space around her felt smaller. She backed up carefully, keeping her balance. She remembered every lesson she had practiced. Stay grounded. Stay aware. Do not panic. The tension in the stairwell was thick. A moment passed where everything felt still. She could hear her own heartbeat, steady and strong. She knew she was standing on the edge of something that could not be undone. She took one careful step back, feeling the stairs beneath her feet. She did not know how this moment would end, but she knew one thing clearly. She would not be powerless. As the voices around her grew louder, she held her ground. The girl who had been silent for so long was no longer just enduring. She was ready. What happened next would force the truth into the open, whether anyone was ready for it or not. The stairwell felt colder than the rest of the school. The air was still, and every sound seemed louder than it should have been. The girl stood there with her back close to the railing, her bag hanging from one shoulder. She could feel the solid steps beneath her shoes. She placed her feet carefully, remembering how to stay balanced even when the ground felt uncertain. The others circled closer, not touching her yet, but close enough to make their presence heavy. They spoke in low voices, teasing, daring her to react. She listened without responding. Her eyes moved slowly, taking in every detail. The distance between each person, the angle of the stairs, the space behind her. Awareness had always been her strongest habit. One of them stepped forward too quickly. The stairwell was narrow, and the movement broke the fragile balance of the moment. A sudden shove came from the side. It was meant to scare her, to send her stumbling without control. Her body reacted before fear could take hold. She shifted her weight, grabbed the railing, and bent her knees just enough to stay upright. Gasps filled the stairwell. They had expected her to fall. Instead, she stayed on her feet. The surprise on their faces was brief, but real. It made them angry. Another push followed, stronger this time. Her foot slipped on the edge of a step, and she went down, but not the way they expected. She rolled, controlling her fall, keeping her head safe. It hurt, but pain was something she understood. She had trained through it before. She came to a stop a few steps lower, breathing steadily. They laughed, thinking they had won. But when she stood up again, something changed. Her posture was different. She was still calm, but there was a firmness in the way she moved. She adjusted her bag and faced them. She told them to stop. Her voice was clear and steady. There was no anger in it, just truth. For a second, no one spoke. The silence felt heavy. That moment did not last long. One of them lunged forward again, careless and overconfident. In trying to get past her, they lost their footing. The stairs were unforgiving. As they stumbled, they grabbed at anything nearby, including her sleeve. The sudden pull shifted both of them. The girl reacted on instinct. She moved to protect herself, guiding the motion instead of fighting it. The movement was quick and controlled, not aggressive. It was the kind of response that came from long practice, not from anger. The result was unexpected. The person lost balance completely and slid down a few steps, landing hard but not seriously hurt. The others froze. The laughter stopped. They stared at her like they were seeing her for the first time. She stepped back, putting space between them. Her hands were open, not clenched. Her breathing remained steady. She was not trying to win anything, She was trying to end it. Voices echoed suddenly from above. Someone had heard the noise. A teacher appeared at the top of the stairs, eyes wide, asking what was going on. The group scattered words over each other, pointing, accusing, trying to explain. The girl said very little. She did not need to. Her calm stood in sharp contrast to their panic. Another staff member arrived, followed by a school security officer. The stairwell filled with people and questions. They were all escorted to the office. The walk there felt long. The girl's body ached, but she stayed upright. She focused on each step, on staying present. She knew this moment would matter. In the office, they were separated. She sat alone in a small room with a chair and a desk. The walls were plain. The clock ticked loudly. She waited without fidgeting. A school administrator came in and asked her to explain what happened. She spoke slowly and clearly. She did not exaggerate. She did not insult anyone. She told the truth as she remembered it. She explained the pushes, the fall, and how she reacted to protect herself. They asked if she was trained in anything. She paused, then nodded. She explained that she had learned self-control and self-defense over many years, not to hurt people, but to stay safe. She said she had never wanted to use it at school. The administrator listened carefully. Notes were taken. Another adult entered the room and mentioned that cameras covered parts of the stairwell. That detail changed the tone of the conversation. While they reviewed the footage, the girl sat quietly. She felt tired but also steady. She knew what the cameras would show. They would show the pushes. They would show her fall. They would show her standing up again without striking anyone. When the adults returned, their expressions were serious. They told her she would be allowed to go home early that day. They said they would contact her guardian. They also said the incident would be investigated fully. As she walked out of the office, students stared. Whispers followed her down the hall. The story had already started spreading, twisted and rushed. She ignored it. She had learned not to chase other people's versions of events. At home, she rested. Bruises formed slowly, reminding her of what had happened. She iced her shoulder and breathed through the soreness. She felt a mix of relief and worry. Relief that it was over. Worry about what would come next. That evening, her guardian listened quietly as she explained everything. There were no raised voices, no blame. Only concern and pride. She was reminded that protecting herself was not wrong. The next day, the school felt different. Teachers watched the halls more closely. Students whispered openly now. Some looked at her with curiosity. Others with respect. A few with resentment. She returned to her routine, but something had shifted. The silence around her was no longer empty. It was filled with understanding. She did not know what consequences the others would face. She did not know how the school would respond in the long run. But she knew one thing. Her hidden strength was no longer hidden, and she had shown it without losing herself. The story was far from over. What had happened on those stairs would ripple outward, forcing people to look closer, to ask harder questions, and to face truths that had been ignored for too long. The days after the stairwell incident moved slowly, like the school itself was holding its breath. The girl returned to class with a quiet awareness that things were no longer the same. She felt it in the way conversations stopped when she entered a room, and in the way teachers watched the hallways more closely. Nothing was said out loud, but everything felt different. She kept her routine. She arrived on time, sat in her usual seat, and focused on her work. Keeping things normal helped her stay calm. She did not want attention. She wanted peace. Still, she could sense eyes on her, curious and unsure. Some students seemed afraid to come near her now, as if strength were something dangerous. Others looked at her with a kind of respect they had never shown before. The school administration began asking questions. She was called into the office more than once, always calmly, always respectfully. They asked her to repeat what had happened, to explain her training again, to describe how long the bullying had been going on. Each time she answered honestly. She did not add drama or emotion. She spoke plainly, trusting the truth to speak for itself. Security footage confirmed what she had said. The pushes were clear. Her fall was visible. Her response showed control, not aggression. This evidence changed the tone of every conversation. The adults could no longer ignore what had been happening. Meanwhile, the students who had targeted her were kept away from her. Their behavior was being reviewed. Whispers filled the school with guesses and half-stories. She did her best to ignore them. She had learned that rumors lose power when they are not fed. At lunch, something unexpected happened. A student she barely knew sat across from her and quietly said she was brave. Another nodded in agreement. No one made a big deal out of it. They ate in silence, but the moment stayed with her. It reminded her that not everyone had wanted to stay silent before. Some people just did not know how to speak up. After school, she continued her practice, but it felt different now. She moved more gently, focusing on healing instead of strength. Bruises faded slowly. Each movement reminded her that she had done what she needed to do. Nothing more. A meeting was scheduled with her guardian and the school leaders. She sat quietly while the adults spoke. The school apologized for not noticing the signs sooner. They spoke about new steps they would take, about safety, about awareness. Words filled the room, but what mattered most was the change in their faces. They were listening now. The girl was asked what she needed. The question surprised her. She thought for a moment before answering. She said she wanted to feel safe walking through school. She wanted to focus on learning without watching over her shoulder. It was a simple request, but it carried weight. As the meeting ended, she felt lighter. Not because everything was fixed, but because the burden was no longer hers alone. The responsibility had finally shifted to where it belonged. In the days that followed, she noticed small changes. Teachers checked in more often. Hall monitors appeared near stairwells. Announcements were made about kindness and accountability. These changes were quiet, but real. The bullies avoided her now. When they crossed paths, they looked away. There was no apology, but there was distance. She accepted that. Forgiveness did not require access. One afternoon, she stood at the top of the same stairwell where everything had happened. She paused for a moment, then walked down slowly, one step at a time. Her heart beat steadily. The space no longer felt threatening. Felt ordinary again. She realized then that strength was not about winning a fight. It was about surviving one without losing who you are. She had done that. At home, life continued. Homework, quiet dinners, early mornings. The world did not stop for her story, and she did not expect it to. She was content knowing that something important had shifted inside her. She began speaking up in small ways, raising her hand in class, asking questions, offering help to others who seemed alone. These moments were subtle but meaningful. She was no longer hiding. The school year moved forward. The memory of the incident faded for some, but not for her. It became a reminder of her resilience, a moment when her silence had turned into strength. She understood now that being quiet did not mean being weak. It meant choosing when to speak and when to act. She had chosen well. As she walked through the halls, her steps were steady, her head held high. She was still the same girl, calm and focused, but with a deeper confidence rooted in truth. The story was nearing its end, but its lesson was clear. When someone is pushed too far, the strength they reveal can change more than just their own life. It can change a place, a system, and the way people see each other. What remained was the future, open and uncertain, but no longer frightening. She was ready to meet it, not with anger, but with quiet power and unwavering self-belief. Time moved forward, and with it came a quiet sense of closure. The girl no longer counted the days by fear or tension. She counted them by small wins. Calm walk to class, a normal lunch, a full night of sleep. These simple things mattered more now because she had nearly lost them. The school settled into a new rhythm. The halls felt safer. Not perfect, but better. Teachers greeted students at the doors. Staff stood near places that once felt hidden. The changes were not loud or dramatic, but they were steady. She noticed them because she had learned to notice everything. Some students still whispered when she passed. Others smiled. A few nodded with quiet respect. She did not seek any of it. She simply kept walking. What mattered most was that no one followed her anymore. No one tested her silence. One afternoon, during a class discussion about challenges, a teacher asked students to share moments that shaped them. The room was quiet. Hands stayed down. The girl felt her heart beat a little faster. She had never spoken in front of the class before unless asked directly. This time, she raised her hand. Her voice was calm as she spoke about facing fear and choosing self-control. She did not describe details. She did not name anyone. She talked about learning strength without anger and about standing up without becoming cruel. The room listened. No one laughed. No one interrupted. When she finished, the teacher thanked her. A few students clapped softly. She sat back down, surprised by how light she felt. Speaking had not taken her power away. It had added to it. Outside of school, her life felt steadier too. She continued her practice, but now it was about balance and peace, not preparation for danger. She moved with care, respecting her body and her limits. Strength, she had learned, was also knowing when to rest. Her guardian noticed the change in her posture, in the way she spoke more openly at home. Conversations grew longer. Laughter returned in small moments. The past was still there, but it no longer controlled her present. As the school year neared its end, an assembly was held about respect and accountability. Students were reminded of their responsibility toward one another. The words were familiar, but this time they felt real. The girl sat quietly, listening. She knew her experience had played a part in this shift, even if no one said it out loud. On the last day of classes, she walked down the stairs one final time. The same stairs. She did not rush. She placed her hand lightly on the railing and took each step with confidence. There was no fear in her chest, only memory. And memory no longer had power over her. She stepped outside into the sunlight and paused. The year had tested her in ways she never expected. It had pushed her to the edge and asked her who she was when silence was no longer enough. She had answered without losing herself. People often think strength looks loud. They think it shouts, demands, or strikes back. She had learned that real strength could be quiet, could wait, could choose the right moment. Over the summer, she planned for the future. New goals took shape. Education still mattered deeply to her, but so did helping others feel safe. She did not know exactly how she would do that yet, but she trusted herself to find the way. When the next school year began, she returned with the same calm walk and steady focus. She was no longer invisible, but she was not defined by what happened either. She was simply herself. Students who struggled sometimes found themselves sitting near her. She did not give advice unless asked. She listened. Sometimes that was enough. The girl who had once been pushed down had risen in a way no one expected. Not through revenge, not through anger, but through control, truth, and quiet courage. Her story did not end with applause or praise. It ended with peace. And that, she knew, was the strongest ending of all. She walked forward into her life with steady steps, carrying no bitterness, only wisdom earned through hardship. The past had tried to break her, but instead, it revealed who she truly was. And that truth stayed with her, guiding her quietly, one confident step at a time.